Hey everybody, how you doing? Doug Barry here. I appreciate you joining me on this video. I've got a awesome guest, new good friend of mine. New because we just met about a month ago at the time we record this. This is Tommy Waller. Tommy, good to have you, buddy.
Thank you. Look, it's an honor to be on, and I've long enjoyed and admired your content and podcasts.
I appreciate that. That's awesome. Well, thanks for your service, because as we've gotten to know each other, I know you're a husband, you're a father, you do a lot of work with right now food security, trying to help people keep the power grid up, all kinds of subjects we want to get into and talk with you about in the future. But you're also a former Marine, retired Lieutenant Colonel, combat vet. I mean, you've served the country, you're serving the church as a faithful Catholic. So just thank you for everything you're doing as well, especially in areas right now like food security and helping people get prepared for potential crisis and what may be imminent crisis, I guess, is maybe more better way to look at it. And we're going to talk about some church security issue today, but just give me a quick overview. What do you think about what you're seeing just in general with the threats in our society and our world and the need for us to be better prepared?
Yeah, well, Doug, it is my job to look at these threats. My current, occupation, if you will, as the president and CEO of the nonprofit Center for Security Policy, we look at everything that can threaten our republic, right? So our mission simply is that we provide uncompromised analysis, unflinching leadership, and unconventional solutions to keep Americans safer. Mm-hmm. But what that means when we talk about uncompromised analysis is looking at a broad range of threats. And the reality is both foreign and domestically, those threats are significantly elevated. Mm.
Well, and as we're talking right now, it was funny because right when we got on to start recording this, you had heard it as I did as well, that another bridge, coincidentally, has been hit, and several have been damaged. This is down Pelican Island, down by Galveston, Texas. I'm in the Texas area. I know you're not too far from there yourself, but we have seen even bridges. I mean, this is like an infrastructure piece of our country when you talk about bridges, transportation, like the one out in Baltimore, Maryland. That could be pretty significant. Do you have an opinion, at least based on what we're seeing, why you think we're seeing more bridges? Is this coincidence? I mean, obviously you don't have a crystal ball, maybe you're a mystic. God's giving you the insight. I don't know, but what do you think about why we're seeing these things happen?
No, I mean, look, the only insight I can share would just be that due to the nature of our adversaries and the way that they intend to attack us and have been attacking us, you have to look with a very sharp eye and inquisitive and investigative eye at things that may seem like accidents that could be hostile. Now, do we know? I don't know anything about the Galveston Bay Bridge and the circumstances of it. When you see something that could affect our national security and our safety that looks like an accident, maybe it is, right? Food security, there are hundreds of fires that happen every year in food agriculture. Food and agriculture industry, because food is fuel, right? And fuel burns. But when you start to see patterns emerge and that adversaries attack our critical infrastructures, that they use food as a weapon, for example, then it bears investigation is all. Yeah. And so, I think that's the case.
And that's what I really appreciate about, your approach to this, and why I really like, the idea of getting you on and having you on more frequently is, you've got a really good measured way of looking at this. And I don't like the idea of jumping the gun and getting conclusions thrown out there and that attitude of, well, that's just what's going on, when there's a lot that we don't know for sure, but we do see certain things ramping up and getting worse. One example is we wanted to talk about today and get your thoughts on is church security issues. And I saw a report, have not done a deep dive into it, but a report from a security expert who said that in the history of our country, any mass murder, and I guess they refer to that as 4 or more dead in an incident, mass murder in a church or Christian sort of setting, like a Christian school. In the history of America, the first one that ever took place was in 1962. Now, again, I haven't verified a lot of this, but this was a security expert who pointed this out on an EWTN news clip. And he says that in 1962, there were 4 young girls who were killed in a bombing in Alabama. Since then, and again, that was the first time in the history of our country. Since then, we've had 17 that would be classified as mass murders in churches and so forth. That doesn't count even violent attacks, mental disorder, vandalism, things like this, which are definitely on the increase in churches all over. But recently we've had, kind of a spree of these things happening. And there's a couple we're going to show clips of in just a moment and then get your thoughts on, because really, I think what I'm hoping we can do with this video is draw a couple of things. One is to say to the average person out there, the parishioner, if you don't have a safety or security team in your church, but even if you do have a safety or security team in your church, the average parishioner should have some idea. They should have some idea what they can and should do in the case of a crisis. And we can break that down once we see the videos here. But then the second thing is this. I want to point this out, and maybe this sounds, a little harsh, but I say this with all due respect to any pastor or bishop out there. With everything happening the way it is, if you have not figured out that you need to do something to protect those that have been given to your care in a church, I just think it's a form of neglect. And I don't mean that to be rude. I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but you and I as husbands and fathers know that those who have been entrusted to our care, we're that first line of defense as the men. We have that responsibility to make sure that something is in place. And, you're a former Marine. You're trained in this area. I'm not Jason Bourne, former CAA or anything like that. I have to be that guy still, because I can't wait for you to come to my house or anybody else out there who has that expertise in training. And even you, I know, would say, and we'll get your thoughts on this, what do you think the average family should be doing in the home, just in a nutshell, to have a plan? So I'm going to get your thoughts on all this. Before we do let's get to the clips so the audience can see what we're talking about. We got two clips we're going to show here, two particular events. One took place in Louisiana just recently at the time we record this. And the other took place a few days prior to that, or within the last week or so, in a I believe it's a Baptist or Pentecostal church. So, okay, let's check out the clips here.
Take a look at that. Terrifying moments during Sunday service at a Pennsylvania church today. It was all caught on the live stream for Jesus Dwelling Place Church in North Braddock. The pastor says he's thankful to be alive after a man suddenly aimed a gun at him. He says 26-year-old Bernard Jr. Polite pulled the trigger, but the gun jammed. Church members sprung into action, disarming Polite and then holding him until police arrived. One of them says he didn't think twice.
During a First Holy Communion Mass, live stream video from St. Mary Magdalene Church captures the moment the priest learned of the danger. Parishioners disarmed the suspect, pinned him to the ground until police arrived. A 16-year-old was charged with terrorizing and 2 counts of possession of a firearm by a juvenile. The Bishop of Lafayette, Louisiana said, quote, "We are thankful to God that a tragedy was avoided."
Yeah, so we've got a couple different clips here, Tommy, where we see the first one, of course, man just walks right down the aisle, points the gun at the pastor. Pastor, of course, does the fight or flight, and he's far enough away he can't really engage with the gun. He jumps behind the lectern there, and then a guy comes running up from behind. Your thoughts on that particular situation where you got a guy in the center aisle right there? I'm always thinking, look, if the security team is in the church, they're probably on the peripheral. They're probably out on the perimeter maybe, unless they've got people positioned right there, but that's kind of a vulnerable spot. What do you think about that clip there?
Yeah, look, I mean, what this is just another example of where the people have to be ready to respond. I mean, and this is nothing new, right? I mean, the hijackers on 9/11, they achieved their goals with a few of those aircraft, but one of them they didn't. And that's because the people responded, right? And so that's what you just saw in that video is the people responding. In both cases, in Louisiana, it was the parishioners in the back of the church that apprehended the young man with the rifle, and you saw in the video in the front of church, it was the parishioners. It's up to the people. And I mean, look, and that's the case for our nation right now. Doug, you mentioned, me being a Marine. Yeah, like 2 decades ago, we sent Marines and other service members overseas to fight jihadis, predominantly after September 11th. Right now, across recruiting stations and other bases here in America, there are unarmed service members that are literally counting on local law enforcement to defend them. Look at Chattanooga, right? The only guy that in Chattanooga that was a service member that shot back was breaking the rules by having his personal firearm on that installation, right? So as a military commander, I made sure that my service members underneath my charge were armed. They were armed with issued weapons, as they should be, But that's not, unfortunately, common in today's U.S. government mentality. It's going to be up to the people, right? So if you think about even the Marines themselves are counting on cops to defend them in security stations across America. Who's defending your church? The answer is you. And that's obviously, let me rephrase that. Who's defending your church? Number one, it's your heavenly Father and the legions of guardian angels he has, which is what makes me think, some of those were involved in that pistol not going off in the video we just saw. But yeah, on the physical side, it's up to us.
Well, and I think that makes a great point. It is God, and God normally works through ordinary means in many of these ways, just like working through a man like you and others who were, sent to defend the country, law enforcement, medical. I mean, if there's a heart attack and you call 911, you're hoping God will intervene, and oftentimes he does by paramedics and first responders showing up, EMTs, to deal with the situation. I mean, in both those video clips, you see in the first one where the man comes running up behind him and grabs the guy. He takes him over the rail to the ground. The pastor then comes out. So now you got a couple guys engaged in the situation, and they get the gun away from him. And so I'm always thinking, in a case like that, for those of us who go, as Catholics, you and I and anybody else, but any denomination, if you know who's supposed to be in the sanctuary area of the church, and someone starts getting near it that shouldn't be there at that time of the Mass, it's really up to the people in that vicinity to act in some way. And maybe they just got to go get 2 or 3 guys stand in front with a diffused posture that says, hey, pal, back up. But if a weapon comes out of some sort, knife, gun, whatever, baseball bat, somebody's got to do something to intervene. And this is why I'm adamant about men sitting on the end of a pew and having some idea what you're going to do. And you don't got to be Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris, or Rambo to be able to pull this off. You just have to be able to know that you're keeping your head on a swivel and you're looking for potential incident. And is it not true? I mean, I've heard this saying, and maybe you have maybe applied it even in your career, but hands are what you watch, because hands are what handle the weapon. Hands kill, basically, is what I've heard. Is that an accurate statement? We should be paying attention. And if we can't see someone's hands, if they're tucked in their pockets, we need to be a little more alert to that. What are you thinking about that?
Absolutely true. And there's a precedent for that too. Think about the Mass, Doug. When they ring those bells, what are we looking at? We're looking at hands holding Eucharist. Right?
Yeah.
That's where we're supposed to be looking. And I think that's the challenge for some of us, that is kind of part of our psyche, to be constantly looking for the threat. In Mass, it can be a challenge. I kind of pray about it, because I know one of the ways that my spiritual enemy attacks me is through distraction, thinking about work, thinking about whatever, right? So I think we have to be careful not to be, so that we're paying attention to what we're supposed to in the Mass, which is a spiritual form of worship that was handed down from the creator of our church, Jesus Christ. That's first and foremost. But then asking God to help make us aware if we need to be that sheepdog to protect, physically protect the flock, right? And so, I think there's a healthy amount of attention that needs to go into the physical part of that space. And then also making sure that we don't let that distract us from the real purpose of us being there. And if we need to click from, to click off safe, so to speak, to be ready to do so. Right. Yeah.
Well, and that's a good point, is be able to shift gears, go from one to the other, and have that presence of mind to do that. And that's a discipline. That's a training. I mean, I'm the same way. I like to have my head bowed down in prayer at times, but I still want to kind of keep an eye left and right, and just kind of, loosely, but I'm still kind of paying attention. Now, I do like the idea that there may be security team members, and that's their job. They are watching, and hopefully the parishioners, and for you pastors out there who might see this video, do something, empower your parishioners to have some idea what to do. Because good people can get hurt by good people if good people are trying to act. And, maybe they're carrying, or maybe they're just going to jump into the fray, but they're not trained to have some idea on what steps to take. There needs to be some sort of guidance and discipline in the process. And really, it's upon the pastors to initiate that in each parish and get that rolling. But you're right, trying to find that discernment between, sitting there and calmly praying and meditating, and still having an eye open to pay attention, especially if you got kids or loved ones nearby. And, you don't want to relinquish entirely your responsibility to protect. Now, I also want to hit this one. We got one more clip we want to show, and it's the video of Bishop Marmari Emmanuel in Australia. And he was he was attacked by, I believe, 17-year-old Muslim kid, and he was stabbed. And I believe he lost an eye. He was definitely hit in the eye, because of many videos and images of him coming out afterwards, forgiving the attacker, praying over the attacker, and all that's great. I am thankful that he's a man of prayer and a man of God. And that is actually how we should be. But that doesn't mean that when people jumped in to stop what was happening, they shouldn't have done that. Of course they should have. But get your comment on how fast this happened, because the moment the kid comes up, he gets into the space, and when he's right there close to the bishop and then raises his hand with the knife, now it's on how many strikes he actually delivers, how many blows he delivers with the knife before people engage. So we'll check that video out right now, please.
Moment captured on a church service live stream. In the middle of a sermon, a bishop stabbed repeatedly inside an Orthodox Assyrian church in what authorities are now calling a terror attack. Cell phone video from inside that was verified by Reuters shows the suspect, who police say is just 15 years old, pinned down by other churchgoers and later arrested.
Yeah, so you see there, he delivered at least 5, if not 6, before the crowd was able to get on him. Now, you're a combat vet, and you know how fast these things can unfold. The speed with which someone can attack, and whether it's firing off rounds or whether it's a knife attack or swing of a baseball bat or just punches, does, I think, call for much quicker response on the part of people who would be in the vicinity. And again, that just goes back to alertness. And I know that's a difficult thing. And I don't want to sit here and tell everybody, look, you've got to sit there in the church and look around for something bad. It could be a shopping mall. It could be anywhere. But if you can speak to this reality of how fast these things unfold, which to me kind of tells me I've got to have my guard up and have that presence of mind, not in a paranoid way, not in an anxious way, but you and I've talked in the past about this difference between urgency and anxiety. What do you think about what you saw there and how fast these things can unfold?
Yeah, I think it reinforces, Doug, the point that you made about the parishioners need to be paying attention to the sanctuary, to the altar, the distance, right? So if somebody is approaching it, they're not supposed to be there. The closer they are, the more harm they can inflict, particularly with a knife, that you just can't let them get that close, if at all possible, right? The other thing is for people to know that while that incident they witnessed on that video happened very fast, it is a consistent process globally where people are being inspired to do violence against the Christian community and the church. And that is happening every single day. So even if you think to yourself, well, that was in a different country, it's so far from where I live. No, globally and in the United States, there is a massive increase in hostility towards the church. And in relation to the video we just saw, this young 15-year-old man who, apparently did this for his own doctrine. Our nonprofit Center for Security Policy has done a ton of work documenting these hostile ideologies. And one of the things that I would encourage your viewers and listeners to do is to encourage their clergy to form the kind of productive relationships that they ought to have with local law enforcement, right? Uncle Sam's there's no cavalry coming to help, but local law enforcement, if they're properly trained and informed, can do a lot to help. And of course, as we've said from the beginning of this interview, the people need to know.
Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right. This is nothing new. It's maybe a shocker for us, but we live in a society where it's been very easy for us to kind of relinquish a lot of our, let's call it our basic rights, even for safety and protection. And I'm not even talking about Second Amendment. I mean, a lot of these cases aren't even lethal action sort of moments. If someone comes in and they're just belligerent and they're loud and they're threatening in a church, you still need to get a handful of men who are going to form some sort of a wall and in the right posture, back the person out, maybe detain them in the right ways, know where to grab the wrists, the ankles, and so forth, so they can't reach for something or scratch or poke or bite. But these are things that can be done. You don't have to draw a gun. You don't got to get involved on that level. You can carry maybe pepper spray or OC spray, but these are things to be thinking about and talking about and be trained in. And some of this doesn't require, the highest level of training. Some of it is just general, how to diffuse a situation type and how to form a party of, look, if a dozen guys get up and get shoulder to shoulder in the right posture, they can walk somebody easily out of a church and be able to surround them enough and just kind of blanket them in a way to protect everybody around them. Someone might take a shot, someone might get cut, get hurt, but I'll be the first one to tell you that I've thought about that many, many times over the years. And if I had to, for the sake of myself or for the sake of my loved ones or others, I would do that. And I just think that's in most of us men, isn't it? And yet a lot of men have been somewhat emasculated. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's our role as protectors, and that's what we have to be in the church. And so I will tell you that it's very helpful if the priests, if the clergy themselves can have that same, if you want to just bluntly call it, manly attitude towards security. It's so helpful and it's inspiring. Just like any other group, that top-down direction and inspiration is so important. And I don't know, I'm sure every church has a different sort of plan, and every diocese may have, a bishop may have different, guidance on what you can and can't do. But I would just say that in the places that I have been, where I feel the most empowered and comfortable is when I know that the priest of that particular parish would appreciate people being security minded. I'll leave it at that. So not to get too specific of what certain parishes are doing or what maybe I might do. But it's empowering so if you have priests that are watching this, just know that you're going to gain some significant points with the men in your congregation if you have that kind of attitude, and you'll probably be helped a lot more when you need it.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys in the pews are actually thinking, hey, as I heard a man put it this way, we don't need the Nancy pastors up there at the pulpit. We need some meat, because the meat eaters in the pews want something to chew on. And that doesn't mean, warmongering and mindset. No, it's about just being a man, and a man wants to protect and defend what is good, holy, and true, both spiritually and naturally. I want to encourage the audience to go on out and check out a free download we have. You can click the link in the description below. This is an EDC checklist, and I'll get your thoughts on this before we wrap up the video, Tommy. And also go check out Tommy's link and find out more about what he's doing with security policy. I mean, this is a very, very important thing. And I know, Tommy, you're all over the place with that. But go get this free download. It's an EDC checklist. EDC stands for everyday carry. And it's what do you carry every day, including in the church? Is it you're carrying pepper spray? Are you carrying something that gives you the means to be protective? I mean, I don't go anywhere without a rosary in my pocket, scapular around my neck, and I normally have other things on me as well. But the idea of everyday carry is whether I'm going to the grocery store, the shopping mall, church, or anywhere else, I want to have things on me that will allow me to accomplish, I don't know what kind of emergency might come up. I have my wallet, my phone, my car keys. We have those with us all the time normally. But there are other things that maybe we want to have. You ladies, you carry things in your purse. It's your everyday carry in your purse. If you're a parent with a baby, you've got a diaper bag. You got some everyday carry in your diaper bag you need for those kids. So there are things we need to be thinking about for everyday carry. So click the link, go on out, get the free checklist. That's going to help you kind of think that direction and make some decisions and tweak your everyday carry. Tommy, your thoughts on everyday carry, if we wrap it up with something on that?
Yeah, sure. A couple things. I mean, my wife kind of jokes, if I had a hobby, it would be, being a prepper probably, right? But I take it seriously. Every time I travel, I have a certain kit that I bring with me, certain things in pockets and bags to be ready for a lot of different scenarios. The other thing I'd emphasize, Doug, is that the world and what's happening in this country is not going to get any safer anytime soon. Mm-hmm. So when we look back at 2020 was an election year. There was an incredible amount of violence that took place against property. The people and the financiers of that violent action were never held accountable. And the next step for them is violence against people. They got away with violence against property, and the next step is violence against people. That is on the horizon, and it's going to increase. And so we as men, if we're not prepared to stop it, then it's going to continue and it's going to get worse.
Yeah. Great point. Not a very comforting point, but I think it is true. And I think anybody who's got any kind of, spiritual attunement can get that sense that we live in a really morally deprived world. We see the breakdown of morality. It's like a spiritual immune system. And when you break down the immune system physically, you're much more susceptible to sickness, viruses, diseases. You break down a moral immune system by turning your back on God, not having a prayer life, for us as Catholics, not receiving the sacraments frequently and so forth, not turning to the Blessed Mother in devotion and prayer. We have that kind of a life. We are going to be more susceptible to darkness in different ways. And sometimes that darkness can just be cowardice and just afraid to act. And I think that kind of speaks to where we are with some of this is if we say we're just going to trust God, that means I don't have to do anything. And I would say to people, if you're going to feel that way, then feel the same way when it comes to paying your mortgage or your electric bill. Just trust God. No, you got to go out and work to make the money to pay the bills. So why would we not have to engage in things that would have to do with defense and protection and so forth? Tommy, this is the first time we've had you on. I am thrilled that you're willing to come on again in the future. I want to again tell the audience, please go out, click the link in the description, and check out Tommy's Center for Security Policy website. And he's doing phenomenal work. I just know a little bit now from behind the scenes, just a few times we've talked since we met about a month ago. And you're doing very important stuff that's helping people keep the lights on, literally, as well as much, much more. So please check out his site by going out to that link, everybody. And don't forget, click the link for the free download EDC checklist and start tweaking what you carry with you. Maybe it's in your vehicle, maybe it's on your person. But know that those items that we have can make or break us getting to plan B, plan C, and maybe even saving a life. I do remember, quick, Tommy, you showed me when we had that meeting a few weeks back, and you pulled out one of your little bags, and you've got a tourniquet in there, a little med kit, and I thought, yeah, this is awesome. This is the sort of thing we need. So
yeah, well, look, and it works out whenever your wife's got high heels on and has a blister, and you're like, right, well, let me pull out my trauma kit because I got a Band-Aid. You know what I mean? So,
you might not need the tourniquet, but you do need something, and you're right about that. Yep. Yeah, and that's a quick thought too. That's funny, I think, because a lot of people don't even realize that footwear. If you got your car breaks down and you got to walk even 10 blocks, let alone 5 miles. A lot of people don't even have backup footwear in their vehicle. I don't go anywhere without good footwear, even a little bit of foot powder, even a boo-boo kit to deal with blisters and things of that nature. That's always around me. And look, blisters and slivers in a hand, these things can really hamper a person if Absolutely. They're in a situation. I have gloves. I usually carry a good pair of mechanics gloves, several pair all over the place, flashlights, things like that. These are just little things that really help your situation, don't you think?
Makes a difference. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you take care of your feet and everything else. If you don't, you're in trouble.
Yeah, well,
I learned that in the infantry.
I was about to say, you would probably know that from anywhere you've had to march or hike or ruck a sack or anything else. So, well, yeah. Tommy, thank you so much, brother, for being with us. Really appreciate it. Look forward to having you on again in the future. Again, last thing, everybody, please check out Tommy's link, the Center for Security Policy, in the description below. Click the link for the free EDC download checklist, and let's be better prepared, body, mind, and soul. And Tommy, thanks again, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you.